Slim oil filter, because the normal one wouldn't fit because of distance, so that's handy. We've also trimmed some of this. I'll probably just trim straight across, and then I think I'm going to be fitting a brace bar, so we'll take the engine out, we'll fit the subframe to the car, we'll see how much clearance we have here. It needs to come across, probably just across like that, just to notch the top of the turrets, just because we've removed some rigidity here. One for clearance so that the starter motor doesn't rub, and two for the clutch master to sit there and to actually be able to get my hand in there. Still probably have to take the drive shaft out to do a service, but I don't want to remote filter it. Simple, it sits there, it'll do the job. Brackets in place, welded on nicely. That's the last part of the mount. That basically just stops rocking motion, or hopefully will stop rocking motion. If I find it still needs it, I'll have to put one lower down somewhere, maybe at the front. I haven't really got much room, as you can see, or tie in something just under here where there is actually some room to play with, and there is a bolt hole just there, so there might be something happening here, just to reduce the rock, just something simple. Here's a top tip for you. You know they have this special blue dye stuff that people mark their bits out with. Well, I just use a little bit of black marker and then scrape through with my old calipers at 18mm. Gives me a nice line to go with. So these, that's my top tip. These are 2 bush housings for a couple of these bushes, which I don't actually know what they're for, but I found them. They're not for a Mini. Maybe they are, and I should be using them at some point. And they're going to make a better lower engine steady. That will be out the way, down the bottom of the gearbox, where it should be, out the way of my engine bay, so I can put pipes and boost and stuff in there. So let's cut them, and then we're going to have a piece of pipe like this, joining them, weld it all up. So this is what we've come up with. Basically, that bolts to the gearbox, and that'll bolt to a mount on the subframe. We'll just put the bushes in, and I'll show you what it looks like. So there's a lower bolt, which an original mount bolted onto 2. Don't need 2. So that will put the lower one on bolt onto there, and then what we'll do there is have a little plate here supporting this, and a nut on the other side, and that'll bolt into there. So as usual with these builds, you probably see pretty unusual for me because I just bash it out, but we've made out a piece of card the piece that we want, that will sit in there nicely like that, and create us a level surface here with which this will bolt to. So we'll transfer that to some 2mm steel now, onto there, drill a hole in the right place, put a 10mm nut, retaining nut, and that's how it will go. This is what I managed to come up with. There's our plate that will sit under here, like that, or something like that. Sorry, something like that, basically. And a retaining nut, basically, because one, I was going to do that anyway, but as you might be able to hear, it's actually one that moves. So the benefit of that is that we can adjust where we want the engine exactly, and that'll hold it in place. So we'll clean up the subframe now, and we've got a bunch of welding to do. So we'll clean up the subframe and then tack it on, cut the old mount off, and then take the subframe off the engine, and then do the other welding, so we can obviously flip the subframe over and do the welding nice and clean there. Okay, so that's one long day's work. Well, actually, a few hours in the afternoon and evening. But things are coming together now, ship shape. So there's our lower mount with the nut that slides up and down. So that will bolt on to there, like that. And then this end obviously onto the gearbox, like so. We have made a little bit of a strengthening sort of arm around the back of that plate. I was a bit worried about it, so we've just improved on that. This we needed to get some clearance. So you can see basically there was a tube that went across there, and it was fouling on part of the gearbox. So just touching. So we cut that out, we've plated it, and then we've added a massive thick piece of plate on the other side, which is quite useful because it's kind of like a handle, because this piece slots on as well. Handle not intended. And And then here, we have to do some other bits. Sorry, throwing you around. Hang on a second. Okay, so here again we had to notch out just a little bit more clearance so you can see what's happened there. So it's just thinned down and then put a plate over the top of that. So we've just flattened it back a little bit. The new welder is really improving things, so you haven't really got to weld the grind welds back, but I'm just flattening it to make sure it's smooth and we've got the maximum clearance, and there was a little bit of spatter there. And now on this one's a bit trickier to show you. Let me put it on its side. Right, so hopefully you can sort of see that now. So basically this is where one of the gear linkages, sort of big ball joint on the end of it, of the end of the clip on the cable, has to sort of slide up and down through that little channel there. So we used a piece of box section to support the outside, then we cut away, and then we welded in a plate again. Doesn't look that great or bad. I'm quite happy with it. It's sort of useful too, because actually this mount here for the suspension actually needs to drop down about 1.5 inches down here somewhere, I think. So what we'll do is we'll be chopping that out and lowering it, and then we can use this piece as a support for it, which is quite nice. There's one little support I want to do on the subframe yet, and that's to triangulate here, but I need this back with the engine in place to be able to do that, because the engine block sits around here. So we just want to triangulate that, because obviously there's not much holding on apart from that corner there. It's only one part of the suspension with the tie rods, but it's obviously pretty important still. So other than that, it's looking pretty dandy. So what we're going to do now this evening is we're going to underseal this area here. Hopefully by the morning after breakfast, that'll go nice and hard, and we can stone chip that area, and we can fit the steering rack, which would be quite nice. I've also flattened back all this. We've seam sealed the plate and just given it a lick of primer and done the same the other side. We'll let that dry overnight now. There's a few more holes I could fill, but I'm not sure. A couple of mounts just for the heater box inside, etc. So we'll leave that as it is for now. And then holes for sort of plates for wiring looms and stuff. I can cut those as when I want them, basically. But we'll be fitting things like the wiring loom for electrics first, for the actual lights, wipers. Fit the wipers first, fit the engine, all the brakes, everything, and then we'll see what's what. Okay, so I was considering as a final piece, because obviously I've removed some structural rigidity in a couple of places here, to put a bar right across there. But it seemed, one, a bit pointless in my mind, considering you bolt it to the chassis there, and there's a big bulkhead support across. Of course, it would help a little bit, but the main issue is across here. Plus, I've got a lot of stuff going on here on the engine, starter motor, oil filter, etc. So I've actually taken a little bit more off the top here to allow access for my hand behind the engine once it's fitted, especially for the oil filter, which is about here. And then what I've done is basically split two sections of tube down, and then slotted them on top, welded them on. So effectively we've got a support bar going across now. So yeah, there's not much else to say about it, to be honest. There it is, it's in place. We're not grinding anything down particularly at the moment now, because I've still got 2 more adaptations to do just on the front suspension parts there, and we may have a little bit more to do in this area for exhaust. But we're now at fit point, sort of a mock fit up. So that's all been undercoated and stone chipped. So now we're just going to fit all the components basically. So we're going to get the steering rack out and fit the steering rack on, fit all the pedal assembly, and steering wheel column, etc. Fit all the controls, and then fit subframe and engine in place. Fit their near side hub, if that's enough time today, to find out clearance on the gearbox, which sits about here, to work out what to do with this. Alright, so we have gears, and we have all the gears: first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and with all 4 boxes, reverse. So it's a little further forward than perhaps I want, but I want to check with Mrs. Piggy first. I was actually worried about how far forward it would be, so that's kind of good. How far back, sorry, it would be, so I'm kind of pleased. But they do often have a little kick, the originals, so it would be nice to replicate that, and I've got the wooden knob on the way, so I'll probably just put a little kick there. So rather than it sort of reaching to go on top, it's sort of just you're at the right angle. I'm pleased to say that the throttle pedal seems to be just right, as does the brake and the clutch. Steering wheel Sounds great, but it is connected to a steering rack. So you can just oh yeah. So let's show you what we've done on the engine bay, shall we? This is the trick at the moment. You have to push your finger through the and get yourself. There we go. Right. So there we go. So there's a seat. It's not staying like that. There is a seat, and it is bolted in actually. Pedals, engine mount, steering rack bolts all down there done. It's all bolted in. I'm missing a few body panels, admittedly. So top engine mount, it just needs sort of final finishing. So all these bits need final finishing. Engine is in its place though, permanently. There's that bar going across the back. There's our clutch pipe coming up. I'm going to make a little clip to the subframe that will go there. I don't want to put it in then crush it. Top engine mount, there's its reinforcement in place. Got to do a slight adjustment to the other plate. I might need to improve that plate. Well, I'd like to improve that plate. So we'll make a slight adjustment on that. We have clearance now for our gear selectors. Our axle stands are there because the engine falls forward. Our steering rack is in place. If we have a little look underneath. So, is our fancy new engine steady. I'm well pleased with that. Happy days! And there's our gear linkages coming through, going up. Yay! You'll see the gear linkages working. You're going, no, not really. Can we just like skip to the end and see what dyno power it made? Because that's the only reason people watch builds like this, let's be honest. And push on. So, it might not look much, but I've got a steering wheel, doors, a seat, pedals, a gear stick. I feel like I've finished. It's the first real point I feel I've made accomplishments. Like I've accomplished something, I've actually done something. I found bits today in the old shed where we first revealed Kev. I sort of forgotten exactly what was there, and I found a bunch of bits which I've been looking for. Really pleased.